Christian Leuprecht is a security expert with the Royal Military College of Canada, and he joins us now. Christian, thanks so much for joining us. You've been following the details of this security operation since the very beginning. Are you pleased with today's outcome?
Well, certainly. I mean, one of the things we want to do in these types of attacks is have a deterrent effect. And the deterrent effect means that we're going to show people who aid, abet, or carry out these types of attacks that law enforcement authorities will find them, they will arrest them, they will arraign them, they will indict them, they will prosecute them, and that they will be going to jail for a very long time, because that in itself will make people who are thinking about moving to action think twice before they engage in this type of criminal act.
Now, an earlier security analyst we spoke to had said that we need to be rather forgiving of the amount of time that it took for security forces in France and Belgium to actually find Abdeslam and arrest him, even though he had been in Belgium the entire time. Are you as forgiving? Is this a tougher operation than it would appear to the general public?
Yes, I would concur in the sense that a lot here is new. So first, these types of investigations, these national security investigations, are very complex and fairly new. The legislative framework under which they're being carried out is new. In a constitutional democracy, you have to gather the evidence in conformity with the rules set by the Constitution and the rule of law. Otherwise, the judges will toss it out. So there's always a lot of concern to make sure the evidence is gathered very carefully so that they will actually be able to prosecute successfully, because nothing more embarrassing, of course, than to apprehend this sort of suspect only for the suspect to get off in front of a court of law because of legal mistakes that were made by police. But I think also Belgium is a smaller country. They just simply don't have the sort of capacity and expertise that larger countries would have. And within continental Europe, we continue to see substantial challenges among authorities to work together, even within their own country, for instance, between intelligence and police services, as well as other services, let alone across countries. And so where in North America, we've gotten used to joint task forces that have multiple agencies involved at any given time and that follow leads. As you can tell, even from the press conference, this is a considerable novelty that you would embed officers with other units. Plus, you have very strict privacy legislation. And so these operations are always, it's a considerable challenge to make sure that everything is done in accordance with privacy legislation. So you put all this together, and it's not surprising that that this type of very difficult investigation takes a very long time to carry out. But what's important is, of course, that in the end, it does end up being successful, and it wouldn't be the first national security investigation after this type of major attack that would take considerable time to bring all suspects, or to bring the key suspect to justice.
So having said that cooperation really is essential and was key into the events of today, what does Europe need to do to further facilitate cooperation then between security forces, in spite of what laws they may have?
Right. So, all countries have privacy legislation and have limits on the sharing of data, but there's a whole institutional culture issue. There's just not a culture of broad cooperation. It seems in many European countries, it's still a very sovereign national security. Intelligence is a very sovereign domain. There's issues of trust working across agencies, let alone working across countries. And there's issues of cooperation across boundaries, simply in terms of being able to work together, to have standard operating procedures, to understand how different countries do things, to understand that in France, a terrorism suspect can be held for 6 days before charges are laid. In Belgium, the suspect can only be held for 24 hours. So it means police really have to be on the ball after they make an arrest, because otherwise they're going to have to release the suspect if they don't have all their ducks lined up. And so these sorts of differences, I think there's still a significant way to go. And after Paris, I think that was a wake-up call within France. But I'm not sure it's been enough of a wake-up call in some other European allied countries.
Okay, Christian, we're going to leave it there. We'd like to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights from